Most secondary schools have more pastoral provision than they did 5 years ago, and yet most pastoral leads will also still tell you that the pressure hasn't eased. So the demand is still outpacing the capacity, and you've got referrals that are rising, you've got teams that are really, really stretched. So there's more provision, but the problem is still the same. And so in this video, I just want to explain why we think that pattern keeps repeating and what Counsel Clouds is built to do about it. So I'm just going to walk you through our framework, talk about our big idea, and then talk about how we work with schools as well. So the way that schools, or most schools, are structured pastorally, support arrives once something is already visible. So it could be a behaviour escalation, it could be a disclosure, it could be a pattern that has crossed some kind of threshold and then it gets flagged. And it's that moment of visibility that is what triggers the referral or the conversation or the intervention. So the system is built around that. And you've got people inside that system, you've got DSLs, pastoral leads, heads of year, etc., who might be really, really skilled, experienced. They're probably working pretty hard, but the problem is not the people. The problem is that the model only starts working when something has become visible, which means by definition, everything that happened before that point, so the weeks, the months, and the years of something quietly building inside a student, that's all happened without anything in place to catch it. So it's therefore not a resourcing problem. It's a design problem. And so you can keep adding indefinitely to the responsive end of the system, but you can't change that structural gap. Another part of the issue is that a significant proportion of students, particularly teenagers, they can't identify what they're experiencing emotionally. And if you don't know that something is wrong or you can't name it, then you can't act on it either. So you can't follow someone's instruction, like go and speak to someone, because you don't know what you'd say, or that gap just feels really, really big. So the default usually is silence or suppression. You bury it or you carry it alone until it just becomes way too much to carry. And that isn't a character flaw. It also isn't a pastoral failure. It's just a gap in learning. So the ability to recognize an internal state, to name it accurately and understand how it connects to and influences our behavior, that's a skill with the same developmental logic as any other. It has to be taught. It has to be practiced. It's not going to develop automatically, nor does it develop from a single assembly or an awareness week. The logic or the educational logic of learning is exactly the same as when students are taught maths or science or PE. And research on social and emotional learning is really, really consistent on this too. So foundations must be built before the coping strategy that sits on top of them can actually work. If you don't have those foundations, even really well-designed support gets put onto ground that is just not ready for it. So we use the term emotional foundations really deliberately because foundations imply something structural, something that's load-bearing, something that you can build before you then have to put your weight on it. And that is exactly what is missing for a really large proportion of secondary school students. So Counsel Clouds is a structured emotional well-being and mental performance platform, and it's built to address that gap. So the platform provides schools with short, structured listening content that builds those emotional foundations over time. It's going to help your students recognize and articulate their internal states, understand how emotions connect to behavior and decision making, and develop a habit of engaging with their emotions rather than trying to suppress them. It's not therapy. It's not a counseling service, although we do provide those things too. It's an educational resource. So it's got the same logic as teaching any other skill. So we scaffold, we repeat, and we embed it in the ordinary structure of the school day. So in practice, here's our framework here. That means that we need to use PSHE, we need to use display boards, we have an email cadence that we send out to students, we have a check-in tool, nothing that requires a new structure, new staff, or significant time. Every school receives ready-to-use resources alongside the platform access. So the implementation is really, really straightforward from day one. And the compound effect of this over a term or across a year is that your students will learn to recognize and name what they're experiencing. They're also going to be building a skill set that's going to enable them to help themselves a little bit more. So your pastoral team's capacity is going to get reserved for the really acute cases that genuinely need them, rather than being consumed by things that have escalated because nothing caught them earlier. And so the platform is the end goal. And every school that we work with starts with access to it. And we also work with schools to implement a structured funnel and a pathway to that platform for their students, because there's nothing worse than subscribing to something that never gets used. And then for schools who want a little bit more structure or support, we have this middle column here. This is where we start. And this is for schools who want more structure or expert input. Our alignment workshop establishes like a pastoral roadmap for the year ahead. So in it, we'll synthesize where your students are now, where we want them to get to, and exactly how we think we're going to get there. We'll then also deploy the platform, the themes, the cadence, and the communication during that workshop. Following that, we have a staff skills workshop, and that ensures that your staff are going to get really confident at handling emotionally complex conversations, because when your staff share the same emotional vocabulary, and students as well, the whole pastoral system will become more consistent and far more predictable. In the final column over here, this is for schools that have significant referral pressure or they have limited internal counselling capacity. So this clinical program is going to provide online therapy for your students and for your staff. And the benefit of this is that it's without the cost or complexity of having to hire in-house. I just want to be clear on one thing before we move on, though, is we believe that AI cannot replace therapy, nor can it replace the human relationship at the center of pastoral care. So Counsel Clouds is all built on human first content. So it's produced by teachers, counselors, coaches, psychologists who have all worked in schools or healthcare settings. The platform is also not a substitute for your pastoral team. It's just a way of scaling what those people can do. So the goal is for fewer referrals to reach that really acute end of the spectrum. Now, the knock-on effect of that is that your team's expertise is going to get freed up to be deployed where it's most needed. And for the schools that engage with this shift from reactive to proactive and from constant crisis response to actually building foundations, well, they get fewer incidents that arrive without warning. They have earlier pastoral conversations. They have more confident staff, and they have students who are better equipped to manage their own well-being before something becomes a problem. And these outcomes, they all compound. So if you 100x them across your school community, it's a compounding effect. Now, the question that most schools are asking is, how do we manage the pastoral demand that we are facing? And it's a good question. But the better question is, what are you building in your students before that demand is generated? Because a school that builds really strong emotional foundations isn't just managing well-being better, it's changing and shaping the conditions under which pastoral demand is created in the first place. So if you'd like to see how Counsel Clouds works in practice, the platform, the framework, how it can sit alongside your existing provision, we'd be really happy to walk you through it. There's no obligation, just a practical conversation about what building a stronger emotional foundation in your school could look like. And you can book a call with us via the link below. If you want to look through this framework in a little bit more detail as well, there's also a link for it underneath the video. Thanks for watching.